All right, looks like we are back up. Let me check a few more things, and then we're going to jump in for the evening. I just got to make sure we are rolling and that we stay rolling. Oh boy, let's see here. All right, we're rolling. Happy Tuesday. Hope everyone has had an amazing day. And welcome to the Creative Scholar Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Dannetta, and if this is your first time joining me, seeing as how it's only my third episode, you're not too late to the party, but I'm happy you're here. And I think tonight is going to be a good time to take a few moments to reintroduce myself to some and introduce myself to those of you who are new, as well as go over a quick overview of what you can expect from the Creative Scholar podcast. Right? So allow me to reintroduce or introduce myself. So hence the name, the Creative Scholar Podcast. I am the quintessential creative. Again, my name is Dannetta. Some may know me as Dr. Dannetta because I am a doctor of counseling. But we're going to get to that. So let's start with the creative part. I am your quintessential creative. I am a lifelong creative. I pretty much started singing when I was about 3 years old or so. If I'm not mistaken, I did my first solo in church around the age of 5 and eventually went on to be a recording artist. I am also a content creator and most recently, a podcaster. I am the creator and the host of this podcast. And so over the past 20 years or so, I've been a part of so many creative things, most of them maybe for the first 10 years or so, 10, 12, 13 years or so, for the most part around the music area of creativity, singing again since 5, 3, 4, 5, and my first recording was in my very early 20s. Around the time where I started recording music, I also helped to write music for others. I've done a good bit of background work for some supremely talented individuals, and I've been a part of different singing groups over the years. So although my singing began in church, I've been blessed to literally travel the world because of the gift of song. So I'm very thankful for that. But music is what brought me over to the creative side of things. And since the time that I was coming up when singers were just artists, we are now in the realm of where we are all considered creatives, those who create. So I am the quintessential creative in many ways, but probably my highest right is going to go to the music side of creativity. Now, let's get to the scholar part. So, I started studying creatives and entrepreneurial people, all who could fall under the umbrella of dreamers in about 2003, 2004. Around 2003, 2004 is where I read the book The Dream Giver by Bruce Wilkinson. Please let me know in the chat if you have ever read that book, because if you have ever read that book, I know it had an impact on you. I'm not sure exactly the year that book was written. I was looking on my bookshelf. I don't have it here. It's in a box in storage, but it's one of those books. It's a short book. I've read it over and over and over again. It's been some years since the last time I read it. But for many years, I read that book at least once a year. And, if you've been a friend of mine on Facebook over the past 10, 15 years, you've seen me post it. It's been a while. It's probably been maybe 6 or 7 years, but for a while I posted the book all the time. I've even had people to inbox me and say, "You remember you posted such and such book? I read that book and that book changed my life." So I started studying The Dreamer around 2003, 2004. So um, that's when it began for me, when it came to really digging into what people like me, how we think, some of the struggles that we go through, how we overcome. I started studying that back in 2003, 2004. Fast forward all the way up until now, 2024, approximately 20 years later. Um, at some point, I continued to read on my own, but then I went ahead and took my journey further and went to school to study counseling so that I would be able to grow and get past some of my own struggles and continue to work on my own inner self, my own inner world, so that I could be equipped to help other creative people, preferably even those who identify as Christians. Which brings me to explaining a little bit about the podcast. So, you often hear me say, well, in the past 2 episodes anyway, and you'll continue to hear me say it, that this podcast is where we meet at the intersection of theology, psychology, and creativity. And so just breaking those three down really fast and how I understand and conceptualize them so that you will understand where I'm coming from. When it comes to theology, we're simply talking about the study of God and belief and how it impacts a creative person or how it impacts creativity in our lives. When we talk about psychology, we are simply talking about the study of the mind and behavior. Now, you take those two, and I want to know, or I want to talk about and discuss things with you all and some guests in the very near future about how those things impact creativity. And when I think of creativity, which is basically the ability to dream up, think up, conjure up novel ideas and put new things together, things that are innovative, things that are necessary, things that are helpful, things that bring joy, things that add to the human experience. But when I think of creative people, entrepreneurial people, and then even more specifically, people who have a Christian belief, and even for people who do not have a Christian belief, people who identify with a particular belief system, and even those who don't, and how that way of thinking and believing and being impacts one's ability to create and how that impacts a person's creative experience. So whether you are a Christian, non-Christian, whether you have a strong belief system or not, we're also talking about things that impact creativity. And when I say creativity, I am not just talking about the ability to create, but what it takes for all of us individually in the different things that each of us needs in order to get into flow state. And when I say flow state, many of you may have heard or may not have heard of flow theory. So there's a gentleman by the name of Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. And back in 1990, if I'm not mistaken, he started to produce or put out literature that talked about flow state. So flow theory basically refers to the time when we are able to push past adverse feelings and thoughts and do a particular activity. And when we get into that activity, when we find ourselves in flow state, those adverse thoughts and feelings do not prohibit us from doing what it is that we have set our minds and our hearts to do. So in order to get into flow state, most of us experience more often than we probably would like, resistance. And that resistance more than likely comes from certain thoughts, certain feelings. Excuse me. Sometimes resistance comes from our circumstances, but even in adverse circumstances, when we are able to push past adverse thoughts and feelings, we're able to get into flow state. And when we are in flow state, we accomplish amazing things. So, through our study and our talks and some of the encouragement that I aim to deliver for you here through this podcast, we are all able to encourage one another and share ways that we get past adverse thoughts, adverse feelings, adverse experiences, so that we're able to create effectively. The creative entrepreneur is also very dear to me, and so I very much look forward to bringing people on that are going to share with you all things that will help you in your entrepreneurial journey, right? So, and at this point, let's see. Let me pause really quick, y'all, because it looks like I am frozen. Yeah, it looks like I'm frozen again. So I'm going to stop this, and then I'm going to stop this, and I'm going to come back, and I'll probably just have to piece these two parts together. All right, if you are watching me live, I will be right back.